It's time for the Fan Connection presented by AT&T. Every week, we invite you, the listener, to connect with us by submitting your questions. The best way to grow soccer in the U.S. is to keep asking questions and keep talking about the sport we all love. At AT&T, connecting changes everything. And on USLNT, our connection with you will help grow the game. Jordan, welcome to AT&T Fan Connection. Get on in here.
What's up, guys?
What's up, JR?
How are you? What shirt do you have
I'm
on
good.
today? Let's see.
The FC St. Pauli third shirt.
Gee,
It's
what?
Jackson Irvine's shirt.
Amazing
Third
Santa was
shirt.
very, very good to me this year.
They have
Amazing
3 shirts.
scenes. It's great.
They do.
Oh,
Yep.
that's impressive.
You get to the Bundesliga, you know,
You need a third kit for sure.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got
for us, JR?
Talk
What
to
do
us.
you got?
Okay, our first question is from JB via email. My youngest son loves soccer. How do I support him going pro and one day earning the Landon Donovan MVP award?
All right, JB.
Take it away, Landon.
Well, we don't know how old your son is. I'm going to, this is very simple for me, and I'm going to dumb it down for people, and it's never what anyone wants to hear. The easiest way to continue loving soccer and getting better at soccer is by having fun and playing. And I'm going to break that down because you're like, what an idiot, who says that? I now have kids who play soccer. And a lot of times they have 3 or 4 or 5 organized practices in a week. And it's great. They get to play a lot. But I watch my kids learn the most about soccer when we go in the backyard and we play, or when they watch a game on TV. And they just love to do that. So, JB, my advice to you is, 1, make sure you're backing off a little bit, letting your son or daughter or whoever play, love it, have fun, have the ball around them all the time. You can learn a lot of other things later. You never get these years back where you're just touching the ball constantly. But if they're not having fun at some point, JB, they're going to look at you and say, you know what, I don't like this anymore. I don't want to do it. And then maybe your dream is crushed, JB, and maybe their dream is crushed. So you need to make sure they're always loving it, enjoying it. And your job as a parent is to foster that, but not be overbearing. Because I see it all the time now with the parents who are overbearing, and eventually the kids fall out of love with the sport.
Yeah, very well said. I don't think it is, but this sounds like my friend JB Bickerstaff, head coach of the Detroit Pistons. His son Blade is a stud goalkeeper, young kid, and he's got pictures of athletes on his wall and wants to go pro. So I'm guessing this isn't him, but I'll hit him after the show. But no, on a serious note, JB, I think I've just lived this with my own daughter, and she's on an incredible trajectory for herself. But I constantly asked. You asked a really good question, but in all seriousness, I constantly asked her what she wanted. Constantly. It was all because, by the way, I know how to become a professional. I thankfully have the means to help her become a professional. So I kept asking her, what do you want? Dad, I want to be great. Okay, what do you want? I want to play Division I soccer. Okay, cool. But if she said to me, I don't know, I want to go to the dance, and if I miss a couple of training sessions, that's cool too. I'd say, yeah, fine. I'm going to support you with whatever you do. So this was never about me as a parent. I read something recently. Derrick Rose asked his son, Derrick Rose of Chicago Bulls fame, they just retired his number. He asked his son, do you want to be good or great? If his son says good, then he treats him as if he wants to be good. If he wants to be great, he pushes him to be great. And so I think that conversation about where your child wants to go, because by the way, and not many people say this, because Landon gets his name on MVP trophies and we all get paid a lot of money and the fame. Being a professional is hard. It's hard sledding. But forget when the lights come on in front of 60,000 people. To get there, it's rough. It's rough mentally. It's rough physically. It's rough socially. It's hard. So ask your son if that's what he wants. And if he does, then you support him in every way you can.
Okay, question from Katie via email. I've seen a lot of complaints of women's teams hiring people from the men's game and not from within the women's game. What are your thoughts on this? What are the differences between the men's and women's game that you have learned by joining ownerships and by coaching?
That's a great question, Katie. Okay, so I'll tackle this delicately because I want to be really clear on this. My opinion is that the most qualified person, based on whoever's making that decision, is the person they should try to hire, no matter what they look like, where they come from, etc. That being said, having been in the women's game now, there for decades and decades have been a massive lack of opportunity for women to get better as coaches, GMs, technical directors on the business side, etc. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, just hire the most qualified person. Okay, we'll get Pep Guardiola. Well, Pep's had a lot of opportunity that a lot of women haven't had, right? So in the end, whoever's making that decision needs to make the best decision for their team. There are many men who coach in women's soccer who are great. There are many women who coach in women's soccer who are way better than the men are who are coaching, and I've seen it up close and personal. So I think the key here is more opportunities to learn and grow. And now there's better licensing, and I see when I went through my licensing, more women in the licensing courses than I ever saw before. So more opportunities there, and then given chances to either succeed or fail the way men are. And that's the only, I think that's the only way you can do it. But you can't blame people for making a decision that they think is best for the San Diego Waves is a great example. They just hired a male coach who failed at Arsenal. So they brought him in and hired him. Now, a lot of fans were probably like, well, why aren't we hiring a female? Well, okay, but that's their decision, right? And by the way, there's a woman who is running that ownership group, right? So she made that decision. That's her prerogative. But I think we need more opportunities and that's not just women, that's any type of minority or anybody who's not, what we're accustomed to seeing on a sideline, right? In professional soccer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think for me, I agree with all those things you said, Landon. For me, it's cut and dry. Men have ruined the women's game for so long. Go all the way back to the start of it, right? And there was no women's leagues. And so when there was a women's league, it was, well, we need someone who knows how to coach a professional team. Well, women weren't given the opportunity because there wasn't any leagues. So who coached those initial teams? All men, right? And so that's the starting point. And since then, for various other reasons, men have ruined the women's game. And I think that there's a big rebuild that's happening and trust that's being built, in terms of both financial trust and otherwise. But look, there's been a higher fire culture in women's soccer, and they don't quite have the same opportunities. And I think you have to create intentional pathways for women to get in. If you want to hire, be intentional. I mean, the Rooneys in Pittsburgh were very intentional on hiring an African-American coach. They didn't make any bones about it. And then the Rooney Rule got implemented. And Tomlin has been brilliant at that franchise for nearly 20 years or however long, right? And so you have to be intentional. And whether you hire a person of color, a male, whatever the case is, a female, that's fine. But at certain point, you have to be intentional in terms of who you put in place and how you help foster that, because you can't continue to hire and fire people without building the process underneath, right? So you bring in assistant coaches, you bring in assistant technical directors and GMs, and what that might look like, giving them a pathway to say, you know what, when it's time for change, we want to be able to have invested in you so much that boom, you're ready to go. You're ready to become the head coach. You're ready to become a GM, or maybe we lose you to another team because you've done so well here. So being more intentional and stopping this like hire fire culture that exists in women's soccer.
And you need to set people up for success, right? You don't just hire someone because they, played a few years in the league and now you want to make them a GM. Like you just said, okay, start as an assistant GM and learn and grow so that when they become a GM, now there's a lot of women in women's game in NWSL in either coaching roles or GM roles who had no experience before. So if you're going to do that, fine, but then you got to stick with them 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, let them learn and grow and make mistakes, etc. Or start as an assistant, let them learn and then give them an opportunity. That way they're set up for success.